The European Super League. Those are three words that really struck a lot of fear and existential crisis into the hearts of a lot of football fans when the campaign, or the tournament as it were, was launched all the way back in 2021. Now, truth be told, the protests and the reaction and the backlash to it was so fierce that the project ended up getting canned, and it was actually died down before it could really even get off the ground. But don't think that the Super League is dead just yet, because as recent times have shown, they've teamed up with a firm called A22 and are currently putting out feelers to get the Rebel project back on track. But what exactly is so different about the new Super League that is being talked about? Does it really stand any chance to succeed? And how does the world of football in general feel about it? That's what we're going to be talking about in this here video. So without further ado, let's take a look first at what exactly the European Super League has changed since its rather ill-fated launch the last time around. Now, first off, it is worth noting that this time around, unlike the first Super League, which only featured about 10-12 clubs and an open and a closed system, this time around, the Super League will feature up to 60 to 80 European clubs. What's more, the league will not be a closed league. It will in fact feature promotion and relegation, much like most domestic leagues or all domestic leagues all around the world feature. So there will be no closed system. It won't just be a club of few. And perhaps more importantly, there are plans by those organizing the Super League that they want to also invest a lot of money in growing the women's game as well. All of that sounds very good, at least on paper, but the reaction to the Super League project being mooted once again has been met with fierce backlash right off the bat. Let's just check in with some of the reactions that have come in so far. First off, you have Kevin Miles, who is the president of the Football Supporters Association in England, who put out a rather scathing statement saying the walking corpse that is the European Super League twitches again with all the self-awareness one associates with a zombie. Of course, an open competition for Europe's top clubs already exists. It's called the Champions League. Oof, tell us how you really feel, Mr. Miles. But he isn't really the only one to have such strong feelings against the European Super League, and quite frankly, it's easy to understand why. It threatens the very nature of the game, the way it's played right now, and football, despite what many people think, is really profitable and popular the world over. The other reaction comes from the European Clubs Association, which, don't forget, is a body that has worked very, very closely and continues to work closely with UEFA when it comes to how it is that European football is run. The reaction says that ECA notes the latest dispatch from A22's alternative reality. However, in the real world, this rehashed idea has already been proposed, discussed, and comprehensively rejected by all stakeholders in 2019. Again, as I said, strong, swift rebuttals have really been the nature of the beast, but perhaps nothing beats the rebuttal that comes from La Liga president Javier Tebas. In fact, he didn't really send out a statement or anything. He put his thoughts out on Twitter. And one of the quotes he had, well, he says this. He said, "The Super League is the wolf who today disguises himself as a granny to try to fool European football. But his nose and his teeth are very, very big." Now, obviously, this is a reference to, of course, Little Red Riding Hood and the wolf disguising itself as the grandma. That's what he's referring to here. He's saying that the Super League is trying to disguise itself as a harmless granny, but it is in fact a wolf, and it's very, very evident nobody is falling for that. It's interesting that Tebas is the one saying this, because two of La Liga's biggest clubs, Barcelona and Real Madrid, are in fact the two most keen pushers of the new Super League, the third of them being Juventus. So there is still some backing among Europe's elites for, of course, the Super League, but that doesn't mean that the Super League project can get up and running, at least not as of now. Why is that the case? Well, the newest version, it is worth noting, does address a lot of the criticisms that most people had of the league. I mean, it was seen as a rebel league. It was seen as something done for greed. It was a closed shop setup. There was no promotion, relegation. All of those criticisms really have been addressed, but it still is facing a ton of opposition because people, quite frankly, want nothing to do with the idea, for the very simple reason that it's not seen as much as something that fixes football as much as it further exacerbates the amount of greed that the top clubs have, who want to lionize the revenue and share it only amongst themselves and not the other teams. That pretty much what's the main reason why so many people were opposed to the European Super League. It was simply about making the rich clubs richer. However, there is still a chance that this thing could very well be pushed through, even if it's an outside chance, because look at the third point. All eyes are on the European Court of Justice. Now, the European Court of Justice had actually put out, or is due to put out a ruling on this entire matter, because that's really how far things had reached. But the interesting part is that despite the European Court of Justice previously ruling that UEFA and FIFA would be the ones who would have the final say on any such tournaments and that any rebel league could be sanctioned by them, there is of course a chance that in the subsequent ruling that is expected, well, we don't really know when, but will be expectedly coming out soon, and you'll note even from us here at Sports Today when the break does happen, that if it is ruled that this competition can run in conjunction with other tournaments, and if it doesn't need UEFA's let's say approval, then the competition can be up and running. But if the European Court of Justice says, hey, look, you know what, the UEFA's say is not necessarily needed, the clubs can govern themselves, then we might really be at a point where the European Super League is well and truly back and running. But again, as I said, it seems an unlikely prospect because of the amount of opposition it faces, and that's not true not just for, of course, the clubs and the leagues in general, but also those at the very top of the European justice system, and of course those ruling countries in Europe, whether it be England or other nations. There's a lot of opposition still, so it seems very unlikely that this project will get off the ground a second time. But the fact that the people who are in power of starting up this project are still very keen to push this agenda should be cause for concern. And if you're a football fan, you should actually be ready to vocally protest against this if it really reaches a point where it does seem likely to be happening again. Because yes, football as it is very flawed, but that's not going to be fixed by a new European Super League. All that will do is make the problems much worse for the sport that we all love. But that's just how I feel about all of this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel, tap the bell icon, and of course subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to do all of that, and don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and don't forget to also download the AajTak app. Thank you all for joining us. If you're still on the channel, don't forget to check out a few more videos we may have done. From me though, for now, goodbye.